When Shaquille O'Neal walked through the double doors of the East Side Community Hall on a Saturday evening in October, the room smelled like catered pasta, an old gymnasium, and the particular nervousness of people who have spent 30 years deciding who they became and are about to find out if anyone agrees. Crepe paper in blue and gold, the old-school colors, hung from the ceiling in loops that someone had worked hard on and that looked exactly like crepe paper hung by someone working hard. Folding tables, name tags in plastic sleeves, a sound system playing the kind of R&B that functions less as music and more as a collective agreement about which decade everyone would prefer to be briefly living in. It was 7:22 in the evening. He was wearing dark slacks, a plain white button-down with the top button open, and black shoes that were clean but not new. No jewelry, no watch that announced itself. He had driven himself from the hotel in a rental car, a Camry, silver, the kind of car that exists to be unremarkable. And he had parked in the lot and walked across the asphalt alone and stood outside the doors for 11 seconds before he pushed them open. 4 championships, $400 million, a Hall of Fame induction in a building with his name on the display case. None of it visible, none of it announced. Just a very large man in a white button-down, name tag in hand, walking into his 30th high school reunion. That is when he noticed the first thing. The welcome table near the entrance had a printed seating chart and a row of name tags arranged alphabetically. He found his, Shaquille O'Neal, printed in the same font as everyone else's, laminated, with a small yearbook photo from 1992 in the corner. In the photo he was 16, and already 6'8", and the camera had not been able to decide whether to frame his face or his shoulders, so it had done neither well. He picked it up and looked at it for 2 seconds. He noticed, beside the name tag pile, a small handwritten sign that said, VIP Table, Reserved, with 6 names listed below it in marker. His name was not among them. He noted it, said nothing, clipped the tag to his shirt. He moved into the room and found a seat near the back at a table that had not been assigned to anyone in particular, which meant it had been assigned to everyone in particular, which is the reunion equivalent of the kids' table. He sat down. He looked around the room. He saw the second thing. On the far wall, a display board titled, "Where Are They Now?" Printed photos and captions for 43 classmates, achievements listed below each name. He scanned the board from across the room. His name was not on it. Not an oversight. There had been a sign-up form mailed in April. He had not filled it out. He had done this deliberately. He looked at the board for 3 seconds. Looked away. The third thing was at the VIP table near the stage. A man in a fitted blazer, taller than the others, working the room with the practiced ease of someone who had been practicing for 30 years. Moving from cluster to cluster, laughing at the right moments, touching shoulders, holding eye contact exactly 1 beat longer than necessary. He wore a name tag that said Darnell Reeves, in letters that were slightly larger than everyone else's, which was either a misprint or a choice. Shaq looked at him, said nothing, picked up the program from the table and read it. Nobody in that room knew what Shaquille O'Neal knew that Saturday evening. He had been carrying it for 9 weeks. 9 weeks since his real estate attorney had forwarded him the final documentation on a property acquisition in Newark's East Ward, a former textile building on Halsey Street, 4 floors, 11,000 square feet, purchased through SHA Holdings for $2.3 million, earmarked for conversion into a youth athletics and education center serving the exact neighborhood where he had grown up. The announcement was scheduled for Sunday morning, tomorrow, at a press conference with the mayor's office and the Newark School Board. He had told 4 people, his attorney, his foundation director, the mayor's chief of staff, and his mother Lucille, who had said, when he told her, "Baby, they will see you when you are ready to be seen, not before." He had kept it quiet for 9 weeks. He had attended the reunion the night before the announcement because he had received the invitation in the spring, and because something in him, something that had nothing to do with the foundation or the press conference, wanted to walk back into that room one more time and simply be there. Not as what he had become, as who he had been. The boy in the photo on the name tag, 16, shoulders too wide for the camera, failing pre-algebra, already carrying something he didn't yet have the words for. Trust us, you are not going to see this ending coming. Stay with us for the whole video, because what happens in that community hall over the next hour and 20 minutes is not what Darnell Reeves planned for, not what the 43 people in that room were expecting, and not what any of them will stop talking about for a very long time. Shaquille O'Neal was born in Newark in 1972. The neighborhood where he grew up was the kind of neighborhood that produces people who are either shaped by it or broken by it. And the difference is usually 1 or 2 people who show up at the right moment and say the right thing. For Shaq, 2 of those people were in that house on the same address. His stepfather, Philip Harrison, was one. His mother, Lucille, was the other. Lucille O'Neal was not a small woman in any sense that mattered. She was physically small, 5'2", light frame, but she had a quality that made rooms reorganize themselves around her without her asking them to. She had opinions about everything and expressed them selectively, which made the ones she expressed feel like decisions. She had worked 2 jobs for years and never once, in Shaq's memory, complained about either of them in a way that asked anything from anyone. What she gave instead were sentences. Compact, specific, delivered at moments when he needed them and didn't know he did. When he was 12 and a boy at school had told him he was too big and too loud and took up too much space, Lucille had looked at him across the dinner table and said, "Baby, they will see you when you are ready to be seen, not before." He had not understood it then. He understood it better every year. She was 71 now. She had watched yesterday's rehearsal for tomorrow's press conference from a folding chair in the mayor's office conference room, and when it was over, she had told him it was good, and then told him his collar was uneven, and fixed it with 2 fingers, which was, in Lucille O'Neal's emotional register, the equivalent of a standing ovation. Darnell Reeves had been the class president in 1992, and had been, in the specific taxonomy of high school social architecture, the person who decided which people mattered. He had decided with the casual cruelty available only to those who have never had to question whether they themselves mattered. He was not a monster. He was 16, and he was popular, and he had a gift for reading rooms and using rooms, which are skills that serve a person well in every decade of life that follows, for good or for bad, depending on what the person decides to do with them. He had decided, at 16, that Shaquille O'Neal, large, quiet, failing math, with shoes that didn't match the ones the other boys wore, was not worth the inventory of his attention. He had said things, publicly, in the specific way that public things get said at 16, which leaves marks that the person who said them forgets, and the person they were said to does not. He was now 48 and a real estate broker operating out of an office on Broad Street, and he was, by the metrics available to him, successful. He had a good car, he had a good blazer, he had a table at the right spots, and his name in the local business journal twice in the past year, and a deal, his biggest deal, the one he had been referencing in conversation for 6 months, the one that he mentioned at the VIP table before the reunion had been going 20 minutes, a pending sale of a commercial property in the East Ward that was going to close at $2.3 million and would represent the largest commission of his career. He had spoken about it with the particular quality of a man who needs the people around him to know that he has arrived, which is a quality that tends to appear in people who are not yet certain they have. At 7:44, Darnell moved through the room and reached the back tables. He was doing the rounds, the specific social labor of the reunion organizer, equal parts genuine and performative, the line between the two invisible even to him. He stopped at Shaq's table. He looked at the name tag. He looked at the man. Something moved across his face. Not recognition first, but the thing that precedes recognition, the moment of recalibration. Then recognition. Then something else. Shaq, he said, the way people say a name when they are deciding in real time how to feel about it. Darnell, Shaq said. Man. Darnell looked him over. The white button-down, the plain shoes, the absence of anything that announced itself. What are you doing these days? You still doing the… He made a shape with his hand that was meant to suggest basketball without committing to the word, the way people gesture at things they assume are finished. Few things, Shaq said. Right, Darnell nodded. He had already looked past the table toward the next cluster. You should have put something on the board, man. The Where Are They Now board. Everybody did. He said it with a smile that was shaped like inclusion and functioned as its opposite. You should come sit up front. Actually, he paused. VIP table's full, but we can probably find you a chair. I'm good here, Shaq said. Darnell nodded once more, the nod of a man who has filed something and moved on, and continued through the room. At the table beside Shaq's, a woman named Carol Baines had watched the entire exchange. She was 48 years old. She had been the quietest person in their graduating class and remained, by choice, the quietest person in most rooms she entered. She had spent 22 years as a middle school art teacher at a school 8 blocks from the building they were all sitting in. She had a glass of sparkling water and a small plate of the catered pasta, and she had been watching Darnell work the room for 40 minutes with the patient attention of a person who has spent 2 decades teaching children to see. She looked at the large man in the white button-down. He looked back at her. She gave him a small nod, not the performing kind. The kind that means, I saw that. He nodded back. Across the room, a man named Curtis Webb, Shaq's old lab partner from 10th grade biology, now running an HVAC company in the Oranges, had recognized him within 5 minutes of his arrival, and had been watching with mounting amazement and total silence, because something told him that the silence was the right answer, and he trusted the instinct. At 8:31, Darnell took the small stage near the front for the formal portion of the evening. He had a microphone, and the practiced timing of a man who has been waiting to have a microphone all night. He went through the program, the memories, the slideshow, the moments from 1992 that made the room laugh in the warm, forgiving way rooms laugh at things that are safely in the past. Then, he reached the portion where people could come forward and share what they had been doing. He invited people up, a doctor, a pastor, a woman who had started a non-profit, a man who had done 20 years in the military. Darnell himself spoke briefly about his real estate business, about the East Ward deal in particular, about what it meant to invest in the community you came from, about the $2.3 million property that was going to close. He said the number, let it sit in the room, and about what he had built in 30 years by staying local and working hard and believing in Newark. He said all of this, and it was not untrue. It was, in the way that selected truths function, incomplete. Anybody else want to share? Darnell said, holding the mic out toward the room. There was a pause, the specific pause of a room that has gone quiet enough to hear the crepe paper settle. The large man in the back of the room stood up. Darnell looked. The room looked. 43 people at folding tables with plastic name tags and plates of catered pasta and 30 years of accumulated history between them. They watched Shaquille O'Neal walk from the back of the room to the front. He walked the way Lucille had always told him to walk, like the room was already his, and he was simply arriving in it. He took the microphone. I didn't put anything on the board, he said. I didn't sign up. Came tonight just to be here. He paused. I love this city. I grew up 6 blocks from this building. A lot of you were there when I was trying to figure out who I was going to be. He looked at the room. He did not look at Darnell specifically. He looked at all of it. Tomorrow morning there's going to be a press conference at City Hall. We're opening a youth center on Halsey Street. Athletics, tutoring, after school. For the kids who grew up where we grew up. He paused. SHA Holdings funded it. That's my company. Another pause, shorter. $2.3 million. Same number you heard up here a few minutes ago. Different building, different outcome. The room was completely still. Darnell Reeves had gone the color of a man who has just understood something he should have understood 6 weeks ago. Because SHA Holdings, the name on the documents his broker contact had sent him, the name on the purchase agreement for the East Ward commercial property that was going to be his biggest commission, the name he had seen on the paperwork and had not researched beyond confirming the funds were real, was Shaquille O'Neal's holding company. The buyer he had been working with for 6 weeks. The buyer who was closing tomorrow. The buyer whose press conference Darnell had just, at a microphone, in front of 43 people, accidentally described as a real estate deal that would benefit his own career. He understood it in stages. The room watched him understand it. Shaq looked at him, not with satisfaction, not with the expression of a man arriving at a revenge he has been planning, with something quieter and more final than that. The expression of a man who came to a room to remember where he started and ended up reminding the room of something it had forgotten. "Darnell," he said, still at the mic, "I need you in that building on Monday. I want you to walk through it. You know this market better than anyone in this room. There's a role for that." He paused. "If you want it." Darnell said nothing for a moment. The room waited. Then he nodded. The same kind of nod a man gives when a sentence has just rearranged something in him that he is not yet ready to name out loud. Carol Baines, at the table beside where Shaq had been sitting, put down her sparkling water. She picked up a pen. She wrote something on the back of her program. She did not show it to anyone. She folded it and put it in her bag. Later, in her car, she unfolded it and read it back to herself. "They will see you when you are ready to be seen." She did not know where the sentence came from. She knew it was true. Curtis Webb did not say anything to anyone that night either. He drove home to the Oranges and sat in his car in the driveway for 4 minutes. Then he went inside and called his mother. Darnell Reeves showed up to the Halsey Street building at 9 on Monday morning. He was early. He walked through all 4 floors. He asked questions that were good questions, the kind that come from someone who actually knows the material. The community liaison role was offered formally on Wednesday. He accepted it on Thursday. He did not speak about the $2.3 million commission in conversation again. He found that he did not need to. The youth center opened the following spring. At the ribbon cutting, Lucille O'Neill stood in the front row in a yellow coat that she had pressed that morning before anyone else was awake. When her son cut the ribbon, and the cameras went off, and the crowd made the sound crowds make at the moment something becomes real, she looked at him across the noise with the expression of a woman who has been waiting 30 years for a room to finally see what she has always known was there. She had told him it would happen. "Baby, they will see you when you are ready to be seen." He was ready, and they saw him. Drop a comment and tell us where you're watching from, and tell us about a moment when a room finally saw you after you had been invisible in it for too long. If this one reached you the way we think it did, hit that like button, because this story deserves to travel further than our subscribers. We are building something here, a community of people who know that the reveal is not the point. The work is the point. And if that's you, subscribe and come be part of it. The next video is already waiting. We will see you there.